Hello everyone. Welcome to MRU E-Learning platform powered by Mallareddy University. I am R. Dhananjay Rao, Research Scholar, Assistant Professor, Department of Digital Forensics. So, in today's session, we will be discussing about most important concept, that is biometry and biometric security, where in day-to-day life, we come across biometric applications everywhere. So they are generally used for physical access or for logical access or for accountability. In general, we see or we come across accountability strategies itself. That is only for attendance systems, login and logout. We will be calling them as punch in and punch out also. So how these biometric systems helps us for accountable things as well as for physical access and logical access. We need to know about the basic information related to that, as well how well we will be able to evaluate the content that is being acquired by these biometric systems, and in what way we will be providing or granting access to the users. So in today's session, we will be discussing the basic fundamental thing of any biometric system, that is called as design cycle of biometric systems. So in this design cycle, always we need to focus on how effectively a biometric system is being structured and in what way the step-by-step process will give us access or authentication for providing the grant access to the devices or to any other entities. So the first part of it, as I said, we need to understand where we want to use this particular biometric thing. So understanding the nature of application is the primary requirement before we go for biometric processing. And the second most important thing is that based on the application, how well we need to choose the biometric trait. So here, biometric trait will be of two categories. One is physiological trait, whereas the other one is behavior trait. So physiological traits are always related to the things that we come across, or they are related to our physical body, such as fingers, iris, retina, face. These are such kind of things that considered as physiological traits. Whereas the second is behavior traits, is that our signature and how well we are been using the keyboards comes under behavior traits. So based on the application itself, we need to select the trait, because all the traits may not be fitting for the application. Such as if I am saying that my application is related to accountability of an employee, in such case, there is only the physiological trait that helps me to accountable him, such as either taking his face impression or else we can take his fingerprint impression. So we can choose any one of the trait. So depending on the application itself, we need to choose the trait. So the second most important thing is choosing the biometric trait based on the application. And now the third part is, once the application is known to us and once we choose the trait, we need to do the evaluation. That is, we need to make a decision whether to consider him as an authorized person or unauthorized person. So whether he is a legitimate or illegitimate. So these things of decision will be taken only on the basis of evaluation. So the third most important criteria in designing the biometric system is evaluation. And this evaluation will be having much more subtopics that will be involved here. If you go through this slide itself says all the 3 points that I mentioned now. So understanding the nature of the application is the first concern, whereas the second concern is choosing the right biometric trait based on the application. And the third consideration is related to the evaluation based on which I need to grant the access. So these are the three major things. Now let us go through the flow chart in what way this biometric system is going to be designed. So here is a flow chart that gives a brief idea of any biometric processing system. So as I said, first we need to start. The second, as I said, we need to go with the application where I want to use this biometry. Then the next comes as choosing the biometric trait. And earlier we said the last step, that is evaluation. But going through the evaluation and after choosing the biometric trait, in between we'll come across two more steps. That is how to collect the data from the trait and how we are going to perform the evaluation. So here collecting the biometric data, and here this data is related to the trait which we have chosen. Based on that we are going to extract the features from it. So features are nothing but the collective data that we are going to extract from a trait. So here we will be having the features and matching algorithms will be performed on the data that we have acquired, and then we are going to make a decision. So this is complete cycle of a biometric process. And in this, we need to see that whether we are having any prior knowledge related to that particular data or not can also be considered here during the process. And let us see in detail what is this particular nature of application designed for us. So in this nature of application, we'll come across there are 6 variations that could be considered for us. The first one, whether it is a cooperative or non-cooperative. So it depends on whether the user is able to cooperate with the biometric system or not. Based on that also, I need to choose the nature. So always how well we are interacting with the particular system, we'll be considering it as cooperative. And so the simple example is that if we are going for an ATM machine, so always the customer or the user who is using it must be able to cooperate with the machine. That is, whatever the machine is posing the questions, the user must be able to present the answers. Based on that interaction itself, he will be able to go through that particular application. And moreover, the application also sees that whether the recognition is being done for the appropriate user or not. So in ATMs itself, you will come across this feature that if proper PIN number is not being assigned, then obviously it doesn't allow you to interact with that particular system. So this is one of the best example of cooperative and non-cooperative. The other thing is there are some cases where non-cooperative users will be present. So the persons who are not authorized but able to use the system, then we will be calling it as unauthorized users or non-cooperative users. They will make sure that they don't want to interact much with the system because they will take proper measures to avoid interacting with the system so that they cannot be caught. So the next nature comes under overt versus covert deployment. So here overt versus covert is similar to that of cooperative and non-cooperative itself, but with the human perceptibility. That is, if the user is aware that there is a particular biometric system that is being present, then we'll be considering it as overt. If he is unaware of the biometric system, then we'll be calling it as covert. The simple example is that in a particular shop, such as a jewelry shop, so there are some cameras which will be visible to the user. So obviously a customer who steps into that particular jewelry shop will be able to be aware of the surveillance systems that are being present there. Then he will be considered as overt. there is a hidden camera that is going to be present in one of the unknown sources, then obviously that hidden camera will not be able to be known to the customer. Then we consider at that moment as covert. So overt and covert are related to how well we are aware of that particular surveillance systems. And generally, the third category or the third nature is related to habituated and non-habituated devices. So everyone, just like in software companies, will come across these particular scenarios. So a particular user will be allocated with a dedicated system, and he's been using for a long period, that is for 3 to 4 years, the same system is being used by the user, so that he is aware of the entire keyboard and what are the features that are being present in that particular keyboard and in what way he needs to use. He may not be using it without seeing also. So as he is habituated, he will be able to type much user-friendlier to that particular system rather than to any other system. So habituated is related to how frequently we will be using the system. Based on that, we will be having some behavior aspects that could be considered. As well, non-habituated systems will make us, even though the user is an authorized user, because of non-habituation, non-frequency of utilization, the parameters may be validate him as an unauthorized. So here we need to consider this type of nature is also important. And there is another nature called to be as attended versus unattended operation. Here, attended means that whether this biometric particular system is being monitored or being controlled by a human supervisor or not. So there will be a person who will be assisting us in performing the act before the system. Then we will be calling it as attended systems. So the nature of application, so the user may not be aware of that particular biometric system. Then obviously an assistant or a supervisor will be there who is habituated with the system to take care of the access. So that type of systems we will be considering it as attended. And unattended means that the systems that are being used by the individual. And the next nature of application are related to controlled versus uncontrolled. So here, controlled and uncontrolled, because the biometric system which we are being providing may be that it could be present interior or else the exterior. Wherever we are been keeping it, it is going to encounter with certain parameters which are related to environmental conditions, and because of those environmental conditions, there could be some changes in the processing or in considering the parameters. So environmental conditions are needed to be controlled, and proper access or proper utilization must be done to the user, or proper interaction must be done to the user with the system. So here controlled relates to how well we are been maintaining the system as not being caught to the environmental changes. So that we need to consider. And the next one is related to open system as well as closed system. Generally, open system and closed system are going to be considered on the basis of interactions with the system by the user itself, wherein a person has been using a particular system and where he is granting the access of his finger, and that finger is not only given as a trait for that particular application. If he is using the same finger for multiple applications, then we will be considering them as open systems. Closed systems are related to one trait related to one application. In that way, if we are dedicating, then we will be considering them as closed systems. So always we need to make sure that always based on the application, we can have the same fingerprint that can be used for multiple applications, as well as it can be dedicated to a specific application. So in that way, the nature of the application can be designed or been defined. Later in the processing system, we come across choice of biometric trait. So based on applications, we need to go with the trait. As I said, traits are of two types, physiological and behavior traits. So what is the application? As we decided earlier, then we need to go with the choice of the trait. And here, when we are choosing the trait, we need to make sure that it has some parameters that are needed to be considered, in which the first parameter that needs to be considered in choosing the trait is universality. What does it mean? Is that whatever the trait that I am been using, it needs to be perfectly enrolled and it has to be accepted by the biometric system. So universality is related to acceptance of the biometric system. And the next thing is uniqueness, where the trait whichever we are been taking or been choosing must be having a distinct characteristics that are been for the individual, and they cannot be matched with any other characteristics or to any other user. We need to choose the characteristics in such a way they are distinct with each other, so that we can avoid the false acceptance rate and failure to enroll rate. And the third most important consideration in choosing the trait is related to permanence. See, whenever a trait is being taken out, we need to see that the trait always remains the same for over a long period. Here, for every trait, whichever we are going to consider, we will be having a particular duration of it, such as if we go with fingerprint enrollments. If you see, below 5 years, whatever the fingerprints that are being taken, they are not being validated. And after 5 years, the fingerprints will be validated and they will be counted. And they remain over a long period of across 10 to 15 years. And after reaching a particular adolescent stage, again they will be taking the KYC, that is again the fingerprint impressions will be taken out. And again they will be replaced. And after that they remain for a lifelong process. So every trait will be having a certain time duration to make it available as a static database for us. And accordingly, we need to update or we need to replace those traits. And if, for example, if I am giving a particular thumb impression for my fingerprint biometric processing, wherein there is a chance that it get failed during the winter season, because in winter season what happens is that the skins or due to the environmental conditions, a layer on the skin may be peeled off, by which the characteristics may be altered. So always we need to make sure that along with a fingerprint impression, I need to give multiple fingerprint impressions so that it must be granting access to the right person. So that permanence is always related to how well we will be able to give an impression for over a period of time. And the next thing is measurability, where this particular measurability is related to when we are been providing the trait to the biometric system, how well we will be able to extract the details from it. Whether we will be able to extract the details in an analog format or whether we will be able to extract the details in a digital format. Based on that, the measuring parameters will be varied, such as if I say a keystroke is one of the trait. So the keystroke always lies on pressing and releasing. So pressing and releasing will always relates to a frequency, so which are being considered to be as analog signals for us. So pressing and releasing, if they are being done in a fast space, we will be having variations in impulses. And again, I will be taking them in terms of the frequencies itself. So whereas if I take the digital fingerprints, that is the image which has been acquired by the biometric process, that will be taken out as a grayscale image, and from the grayscale image I will be able to take the characteristics in terms of binary representations, where all the parameters will be studied or being measured in digital processings. So measurability always relates to how I am acquiring and in what way I am considering my data for analysis. And the next is related to performance. Here, the performance of any system will be defined on the basis of the acceptance of that try to that particular biometric system. Once it accepts it, then it must be able to recognize all the characteristics on that particular trait. So here that performance will be measured in terms of accuracy. So here accuracy may be related to acquisition, accuracy may be related to the processing, accuracy may be related to the decision. Overall accuracy can be measured separately. So based on the scenarios, the performance can be evaluated in stepwise. And the next one is related to the acceptability of the trait. Here, so any biometric system must be capable enough having many number of users. So there are certain biometric systems, they are limited for a limited number of users. So it depends upon the system that we are been choosing for an application. So in a surveillance camera, if I am fixing a particular system, that is size of the acceptance, it becomes a quite complex for us to analyze after that. So always it should be unlimited. So here always acceptance related to target acquisition or the acceptance by the biometric system. So there are certain fingerprint biometric systems which can accept only 100 fingerprints, not more than that. We'll be calling them as prototype biometric systems. There are certain biometric fingerprint systems which can accept more than 10,000 fingerprint impressions. So after acquiring and reaching the maximum value, again we need to reset it again. So there are certain systems which can accept 1 lakh fingerprint impressions. Depending upon the architecture, these biometric systems will be accepting the target population or the target acquisitions that can be countable. And the last parameter that we need to consider is the circumference. That is, so what could be the possible chances of accepting a fake biometric trait? Either it could be related to finger, it could be related to a false voice, it could be related to a forgery, or it could be related to a false face. So the circumference here always relates to acceptance of fake things. So we need to make sure whenever we are designing a biometric systems, these 7 characteristics must be considered. Based on that itself, we need to choose the trait and then we need to apply it for the application. If it is not done, then obviously there will be a chance for an unauthorized user to be provided with an access. So this makes us the more concerned thing. And here, as I said, after choosing the biometric trait, we need to go to the evaluation. So for performing the evaluation, we need to make sure there should be certain data. So the trait itself will not consider to be as data, because the data whichever we are been having is informed as one of the master or raw data for us. From that raw data, it will be having a collective information related to the trait. So whenever I want to make it, always I need to see that particular trait, what is the size of it and what is the stability of it and what is the ability of it and in what way it is being acquired by the biometric system and what are the variations in the fingerprints that can be acquired by the sensors, whether they are being taking out those impressions in the same manner or not. There are several considerations that need to be noted while collecting the data. So when trait is acquired by the biometric device, we cannot simply consider the trait as our data. So whether the trait which we have taken is in appropriate size or not, and from that trait, what is the amount of data that we need to take, and what are in that data, how many subsets can be made to have a proper evaluation. So based on that, we will be going for features. So features here, whatever the term that we are been saying is nothing but a subset of data that is being taken out from a collective data. So features are considered as subsets. So in these subsets, we will be taking out based on the current requirement or based on the nature of the application, we will be able to acquire it. So while acquiring that, we need to make sure whether what type of subset must be preferred. I need to have a prior knowledge related to that particular trait. What could be the subsets that can be taken out from the entire master data set? So based on the prior knowledge, I can create the subsets, and those subsets can be used for matching or for comparison or for evaluation. So here a prior knowledge is always required for us to define the uniqueness as related to the subsets. And particularly, if I am capable enough of taking that, then I'll be able to perform matching or comparison based on the software programming method. By using certain algorithms, I'll be validating it. So if I am using, let us take, to understand this concept, I'll be giving you one example. That is, if a fingerprint is being taken out as my trait, so the thumb impression, whatever I am been placing on the biometric processing, what happens is that it will be scanned by a simple lightning system will be there that scrolls down from top to bottom in an horizontal manner and or else in vertical manner. Once it is done, the scanning of the thumb impression is being taken, which means that the thumb impression is being acquired. Now this thumb impression will be considered to be as my overall master data or a collective data. From this thumb impression, I need to create the features which are used to identify the distinctiveness of the characteristics. So to know that, I will be studying the impression of the thumb in such a way that what are the curls that are being present, ridges that are being present, what are the delta points that are being present. There are certain characteristics that are being there which helps us to divide these thumb impressions into subsets, and those subsets are related to the considered as features itself. Swirls, eyes in values, or else thumb impression way from which we will be having curves, edges, ridges, delta points, anything related to that. If I am having a knowledge related to that trait, I will be able to create more subsets from that. So those subsets are considered as features. Those features will be given to my testing, that is to validate or for the evaluation. And always remember that how this evaluation will be done is that evaluation is considered as the most complex and the challenging task in the biometric system. Why? Because is that based on that trait, I need to choose a particular algorithm where that algorithm helps me to validate the person. So you might be knowing there are certain algorithms that are being there, that is PCA, Principal Component Analysis. The term itself says I need to identify the principal components from the master file. So the principal components will be taken out as my features, and those features will be considered for evaluation. In that way, there is another algorithm called to be as LDA, that is least discriminant analysis. So the features which are least discriminant will be identified and they will be kept aside. So in that way, depending upon the field where I am been using this biometric system or to the application, I need to choose the algorithms, and based on the algorithms, I need to go for the evaluation. Once the evaluation is done or during the evaluation process, I need to verify certain things, such as what are the possible errors that could be occurred during the evaluation. That is the first criteria that we need to consider, because we need to avoid or we need to minimize the errors that are being present here. And the next most important thing is that what could be the reliability of the content that is being acquired, and in what way this evaluation makes it more efficient in authorizing the person. That is the second most important thing that we need to consider. And the third most important thing is that how secure we are been making this biometric system, whether we are been providing access to the vulnerabilities that are being there, or whether we are granting access to any other spoofing attacks or any other things. So depending upon the application, we need to see the security concerns of it during the evaluation process. And the next one is the acceptability and by the user. So whether the user is comfortable in giving his right to the biometric system and being allowed for the processing and being authorized to be evaluating that. So here the user comfortness and flexibility are also matters when he is using the biometric system. During the evaluation process, we need to see this thing as the primary thing, because this thing will be defining the classification related to public biometric systems as well as to the private biometric system. In private biometric system, there is no particular rules and regulations to provide the right to the system. But when it comes to the public, always there should be systematic approach in providing the right. And last but not the least, we need to see that what is the cost of the biometric system? Is it affordable? And is it suitable for that particular application? So the entire cost is also been correlated to the efficiency of the system, how well it is been performing to evaluate or to authorize the person. So this type of things, if we keep on asking, then evaluation must be able to provide the answers for it. There is no certain system that has been defined to give the entire answers for all the types of evaluation, but we will try to make sure that more than 90% of the questions can be answered by any biometric system before it is being designed.